Welcome to Witnessing Faith with Bishop Dewane. I'm Susan Laielli, Communication Director of the Diocese of Venice in Florida. Witnessing Faith with Bishop Dewane can be heard here on Relevant Radio on 1410 AM and 106 FM in Fort Myers, or of course, anytime at dioceseofvenice.org/ look for the words, Our Bishop. Most Reverend Frank J. Dewane, welcome back to Relevant Radio.
Thank you, Susan. Good to be back with you and our audience.
Thank you, Bishop. Should we open with a prayer today?
All right, let's do that. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. And as we are in the month of May, let us say, Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Amen. Well, Bishop, it is the end of May, and it is Mental Health Awareness Month. And for some time, you've been saying it is very important for us to address mental health crisis issues happening in our world, our state, and now our diocese. So I wanted to ask you, is there an intersection for you between faith and mental health?
Two ways I respond to that, yes. One is by, if you want to say personal experience, when I see people talk to people, they talk about how much their faith helps them. And these are individuals who might be, maybe, and they'll tell you right away sometimes, I really struggle with depression, or I struggle with anxiety, but my faith is good, it helps me, so I hear it there. But I think we also see in professional literature also individuals who are far more schooled in that discipline that I might be, saying that when people believe in something, when they have, if you want to say, a goal in life, when they belong to a congregation and they gather and they find individuals with whom they can talk to and share, they're not pent up in any kind of individuality or feel alienated from others. Do they still deal with some of the same anxieties? I think probably yes. But they have somebody to share that with. They have somebody to talk about with. And then I also think that religion can always be a source of comfort and guidance to people. Somebody who might be having a difficulty. You know, it provides a basis for moral beliefs in many instances. It provides an explanation sometimes for suffering. And I think that's not only true of our faith group, but multiple faith groups. Their understanding of suffering, sometimes sharing that with somebody is very helpful to them. They don't feel like it's just them that has to suffer from this. Maybe it's loneliness, anxiety, whatever it might be.
Does society place a lot of pressure on priests to be psychologists and just to be able to listen and be able to stand by? Do the priests feel that kind of pressure?
Yes, I think so. I think the real difficulty comes in we're in such a litigious society, and somebody says, I need to talk to somebody about my, maybe they'll use the term mental health. Well, there's a little, right there, he didn't get a degree in that. You know, we're blessed to have Catholic Charities and maybe some other sources to send somebody to. But I think what a priest can do, and many will say, listen, I'm willing to talk to you, but I'm not a professional counselor, psychologist, psychiatrist, any of that, just to say, you know, I'm a man of faith and I think we share that and I'd be happy to talk to you. So I think priests are approached in that regard often.
So to help us sort through the very deep topic of mental health and mental illness, which are two different things, and we'll learn more about that coming up, our special guest is Geraldine Paletti. Geraldine is the program director for Family Counseling Center with Catholic Charities, Diocese of Venice. Welcome. Welcome to the microphones. Welcome to Relevant Radio.
Hello. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm pleased to be here.
So the difference between mental health and mental illness, we'll start there.
Well, mental illness implies a disorder, a disease, where mental health is a generic term for the state of being of your mental health, which could either be health or non-health. So the distinction is one is a generic term and one mental illness is actually referring to sickness or disorder.
So, Geraldine, please tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your office within Catholic Charities.
Certainly. I'm a licensed clinical social worker since 1998, and I have been employed at Catholic Charities as the program director. It'll be 6 years next week. And my current role, and has been for the past 3 years, is the clinical director of all the Diocese of Venice, serving all the mental health services.
It's a big job, Bishop.
It is. And I know it keeps her moving around the diocese, certainly
That's
not
true.
sitting still.
Mhm.
But we're blessed to have someone with your background, your professional skills. I think when we look to the statistics, what do we hear? 1 in 5 people suffer a challenge in some way regarding their mental health. That could create quite a line outside your door.
Absolutely, Bishop. And I thank you for your appreciation. And we know that the need existed pre-COVID and has expanded exponentially even with COVID. So it's wonderful that Catholic Charities is able to provide these services.
Well, I would say, Bishop, it seems to me that Catholic Charities and the mental health services that you provide really haven't gotten a break, because it was Irma that took them down the path of being extremely busy, and then that just led into the pandemic. So, Geraldine, maybe you can describe a little bit about what your work has been like over the last 3-4 years.
Definitely, Susan, I can do that. We were a quiet, small program in Naples, Florida, with just a few employees, and we were serving mostly Golden Gate area, but the larger Collier County, but mostly Golden Gate. And then we expanded into several of the schools in Collier County on site, which has been a huge asset to the community. And we received a grant from the American Red Cross. All the dioceses of Venice did. And so in December of 2018, we started providing free services to all the dioceses of Venice for any person that resided in Florida during Hurricane Irma. So they did not have to experience trauma or consequences. They literally just had to reside here. So that expanded our service area, and that's when we went from just being Naples to all of the Diocese of Venice. And we expanded our schools. And then right as the Red Cross grant was ending, it literally overlapped a month with the pandemic, and we received 4 additional grants to provide telehealth, and we implemented telehealth within a week of the emergency shutdown.
That's remarkable.
Yes. And so during the Red Cross grant, I added 18 contractors to our Diocese of Venice services.
So what does that mean for the public? How do we interpret that?
We tripled our staff, or our service providers, by 4 times, more than 4, in order to serve all of the dioceses and not just the Collier County.
So is the phone nonstop?
The phone has been nonstop. We did find, just as a side note, that the need for financial assistance was even more explosive than the need for mental health, although we had a substantial and significant increase of requests for mental health. But we immediately established 3 call centers for each region of the diocese, and the financial assistance calls were endless.
Is that for the pandemic, for Irma and the pandemic, either or?
We already had a program that's separate from my program, specifically disaster relief. And they had a whole program unto themselves for the Red Cross for the grant. But specifically for the pandemic, the financial assistance calls were tremendous. And we found that many of our clients that were experiencing the financial, we would then encourage them to try to link to the counseling as well, because obviously there was much emotional distress as a result of trying to meet your survival needs, such as housing, food, employment.
It's so stressful for people. I can't even imagine Irma and then a pandemic on top of that.
Yes. Yes.
It just kind of brings to mind the kind of ripple effect, if I can put it that way, of mental illness. That when it's present, if it's found in a family, found with an individual, they also tend to have other kind of chronic diseases, whether it's diabetes, whether it's cancer. There tends to be an association there. Is there any medical relationship? I don't know, but or maybe they just don't take care of themselves well enough because of the anxiety. Oh, I don't want to go to the doctor. I don't want this. I don't want that. But then we see it, when there's an event in the community, it also causes a great anxiety, whether that's in the family, the individual. Certainly we saw it during the pandemic in homes for the elderly. Look at what that caused. I think in also such stress and tension, anxiety among families of people who maybe their parents were in a nursing home, what we refer to or, a care facility. The way the pandemic moved through those facilities certainly put a lot of stress and anxiety, I think, onto individuals who had parents there.
Absolutely, Bishop. What interestingly, we identified that many of the adults seeking services through the pandemic did not recognize their presenting problem as a cause of the pandemic. But we know that they had pre-existing conditions or stressors that was exacerbated by the pandemic, so that they were beyond overload and that pushed them into seeking treatment. However, the children was a clear connection when we had a major dropout rate of especially the children when we went to telehealth. But when school resumed in the fall, we were immediately back on site in the schools. And as I said previously, we expanded from 6 to 15 schools in this past year.
Mhm.
And the severity of the symptoms and the number of children experience mental health symptoms is significantly noticeable with the pandemic. The school system has really been taxed with an increase in mental health with the children.
Now, I don't know if you can share some of your experiences or some of your calls or success stories, as you might refer to them, but when it comes to children and talking to someone, what are they dealing with? What have you learned from some of these children?
Well, the social isolation was for both adults and children. That was a large factor because, as Bishop said, they might, not having contact with their families, are concerned about being not even able to see their families, their parents in the assisted living facilities, or just no recreation, no social interaction. We as human beings are, social creatures, and to be isolated and the fear that came with it. So many people didn't have holidays with their families for the first time. So that was for both adults and children. And then the children that were, especially the elementary and middle school, that had to learn through the computer versus in home was extremely stressful on the children and the parents who, especially if they were employed or not computer literate themselves. And then the transitioning back to school with the increase of all the safety protocols. And I mean, I don't want to speak for the schools, but certainly they have additional procedures and precautions. So the children had to adjust to that. So just coupled with the fear of the world and going around as a child and seeing everybody with masks on, I mean, that has an impact just in itself.
I just can't imagine from when I went to like grade school and high school. That was a long time ago. However, I can't imagine doing it without having that association with your friends.
Right.
Exactly.
And I mean, you stood and you watched kids do it. You heard from parents. Some of them had to leave their job because daycares closed down, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the family needing both incomes, I just think it created such a stressful environment. And if we look just to the young people, I think I've seen a statistic, 17% of young people experience some kind of mental health disorder. Well, how was that addressed when they weren't in school at all? Didn't have a chance to see a school counselor or kind of maybe take the edge off of things when you'd laugh with your friends.
That's totally true, Bishop.
Where did that happen?
Yes.
It didn't probably.
I agree with you. As I said, we saw a significant decrease in children's services when the schools closed and throughout the summer. I mean, the summer is normally slower, but we still do serve children, but there was even less so. And then when we went back to the schools in November, there was just a major influx of referrals from the school system and all our other community referrals, such as NAMI and the pediatricians.
Right.
So what difference are you making? How do you know that you are making a difference?
We evaluate success in several ways. One, certainly feedback through the school system, the families, the client themselves, but we use customer satisfaction surveys. Of course, the clinical treatment plan is in every professional clinical treatment, that it's a basic requirement of treatment to have a treatment plan. So you measure the success of the goals and the objectives. And we also use an evidence-based website tool that actually gives us a score and a narrative and comparison that we complete on admission, quarterly, and discharge. So we actually have not only the client directly, our own knowledge and skills, but we have an evidence-based tool that supports us.
You're listening to Witnessing Faith with Bishop Dewane on Relevant Radio, 1410 AM and 106 FM. Our guest is Geraldine Poletti, Program Director for the Family Counseling Center of Catholic Charities within the Diocese of Venice in Florida. And Bishop, I guess I would like to ask you, if I could, do congregations have a certain responsibility in the community looking around at our neighbors in terms of mental health and mental health awareness?
I think we all have a responsibility for our brothers and sisters in need, full stop. Then what is that need? And in some cases, it's mental health. Maybe Father himself or the committee or the individual who assesses it might be a sacristan and just sees that. Okay, how do we make resources available? Okay, Catholic Charities has a program going and they have mental health available, but where else can we refer someone and not just pretend, oh, it's not my job, or I don't have that training. No, I think we have to, in the parishes, raise an awareness continually of mental well-being, mental health, and also the illness when it's clearly visible. So I do think we have a commitment there. Mm-hmm. It's all about, what is great command, love God and love your neighbor. And it didn't qualify neighbor at all. It just said love your neighbor. So I think we have to, when we see somebody in need, how do we kind of reach out to them in a totally non-threatening kind of way to say, is anything bothering you? Just to kind of talk with them a little bit. And you find out, oh yeah, this is serious. They really need some help. And then where do you go with that?
So this is our responsibility. When we say congregation, really, it's about us. It's about us sitting in the pews, paying attention, listening to the homily. If someone is struggling next to you, maybe just being there for them. And so, Geraldine, what is the benefit of just being there for someone, even though you can't fix all their problems? But what benefit is it to just be there?
Well, it's interesting that you asked that because I am a certified provider of mental health first aid training, and I've conducted numerous ones throughout the diocese for staff, for churches, for other churches.
I think some of our teachers too, right?
Yes,
They've been in.
There's an adult and a youth. And the formula that you take away, we repeat many times throughout the day. It's an 8-hour training that I encourage all community providers, police, churches, fire, libraries, public servants. It is a fantastic training for non-clinical professionals to help identify mental illness and what do you do in that situation. And one of the 5 main points of that is assess for risk of suicide or harm, listen non-judgmentally, give reassurance and information, encourage appropriate professional help, and encourage self-help and other support strategies. So, Susan, to answer your question, 2 of them are right there. Listen non-judgmentally and give reassurance and information. Anyone can do that. And if I may add, I at one point was a Eucharistic minister to the hospitals in Collier County, and I was trained by the chaplain at NCH, Naples Community Hospital, and it stuck with me. He said it's the ministry of presence. And many times when you're with someone in distress, just being with them, helping them ground themselves, that someone's being there, just the comfort of someone else being with them, not being alone, not being judged, just their presence of the reassurance and the listening can be helpful.
Yeah, I would imagine that's just so important because I think instinctively we think we need to go the other direction. Oh, that person is talking to themselves. I don't know that I should approach. Maybe they're dangerous. And so we have these instincts that go off in our minds to keep us almost at bay or keep us at distance. So you have to sort of fight that, I think, and be able to say, no, this person's in distress. Maybe they need some help. But it is a little bit of a risk to approach someone, right?
Well, that is actually a perfect example of what we do in mental health first aid training. We go through examples of what you always want to keep yourself safe first. So we actually go through scenarios exactly like that of how to handle it. So, again, mental health first aid is really a fantastic training program for any community providers or government agencies or systems that don't have clinical staff on site, that they serve the public that may have a higher risk of mental illness.
I just have the experience, and this goes along with what you said, but maybe goes a little bit away. First of all, I'm fascinated by the idea first aid for mental health.
Mm.
Because first aid, okay, as a kid, we all learned first aid for whatever, get the Band-Aid out and things. But first aid for mental health, I think the reaction of some is, I can't do that. And the whole point is we all have to do it as we would the other.
Like in the training,
know?
we'll say, if you saw someone fall down and hurt themselves and maybe break their leg, most people would rush to assist to help them up. But if you see someone talking to themselves or lying on the ground looking like homeless, most people avoid them. So that is what we teach in the training is what's appropriate, what's within your boundaries, and helpful to both the agency or the company and the person themselves on both sides of how to best handle the situation.
I also think here in Florida, and you probably know a lot more about it than I, but years ago, I think we saw when funding was tight, so many of the institutions that dealt with mental health were closed.
Oh, absolutely.
Funding was cut, gone. The list goes on and on. I just know from my experience of going into the correctional facilities, because we have them here in the diocese, a good number of them, you go in and you see, I don't know that person truly belongs here, but they do need some mental assistance with their health. They're not doing well. And you see that over and over again. And then when you meet someone who, you get freely talking with, they'll tell you, he said, they'll say some of them, well, this place, because of the mental health situation, this place is really dangerous. And you have to be careful. And I don't think they provide the treatment to those who have been incarcerated. In that regard, statistics show that there's very few individuals available to provide the system within the correctional institutions.
Well, Florida ranks in the past, I don't know if it's a current ranking, but it goes between 48 and 50 in the United States of funding for mental health, the least. So Florida has always, I've lived here 28 years, and it's never gone below 48th of funding for mental health. So Florida is one of the least states that funds mental health in general. So I can't speak to the correctional facilities, but at large.
Well, I think I will add to that. There was an article that was written for U.S. Catholic Interview with Deacon Tom Lambert, and Deacon Lambert is a very much a strong advocate in the Archdiocese of Chicago for mental health. Anyway, in the article, he says, Bishop, that the largest providers of mental health services are the country's jails in Los Angeles, New York, Cook County, Illinois, and Houston. And he agrees with you in that mindset. But potentially, what you're saying is maybe they are really not getting the services they need.
I really hope that Deacon Lambert is correct, that they are providers of it. I have the concern that while the individuals are present who need assistance with mental health, I don't always know that it's provided.
I think it depends on the facility and the county they live in and what their resources are.
When the other facilities were closed, so many of these people ended up on the street.
Yes.
And where do they end up from there? Some kind of altercation, and boom, they're in jail.
But we have success stories, and I wanted to give you an opportunity to share one or two of them. I think there was a woman that I remember reading about in your folder. She was a victim of human trafficking.
Yes.
Can you share a little bit about her story and the success that you've witnessed in her transformation?
Because of confidentiality, I'll just speak in general, if that's okay.
Oh, yeah.
We have a wonderful program under Erica Pineros in Bonita Springs, Fort Myers, and also now she's staff in Region 1 as well, Sarasota. We partner with her. And currently our psychologist, Dr. Marta Adkins, provides the therapy to the victims of trafficking. So they're working with someone that's extremely skilled. Marta has very much experience in trauma. And so we've seen a lot of success with primarily women that, although she's worked with males as well, where they are able to recover from their trauma and their depression, anxiety, become gainfully employed, move into the community. We have housing in Region 2 for anti-human trafficking. So we have seen success that these women go from hopelessness to being able to function in a healthy way through counseling and all the case management services, the financial assistance, and the resources that the anti-human trafficking program provides.
Are there any surprises with what you've learned in the last year and a half, even with being a counselor and social worker and advisor and mentor, and you have all these titles above you, really? What have you learned?
Well, I've learned that our staff is extremely dedicated and passionate about providing quality services, and they have great compassion. I've learned that people are interested in telehealth, and the majority of people are interested in a hybrid model. We've done surveys, and not everybody wants to return in person. So Catholic Charities is planning to continue to have some degree of telehealth and some in person. We are doing limited in person at this time. We have seen an increase with the pandemic of people seeking couple therapy. That has been a noticeable increase.
Yeah,
And
I would imagine a year and a half with your spouse.
Susan.
we
Sorry.
also there was a noticeable decrease in the Spanish-speaking population seeking services.
Why a decrease?
Because many of the Spanish-speaking population are low income in our diocese, and they were focused on their survival needs, such as food, rent, utilities, employment. And that's number one. And also because they did not have the wherewithal, be it the equipment, be it the Wi-Fi, and believe it or not, even the privacy. Some of our clients would go to their car to be able to speak privately. So Catholic Charities is in the process of getting a grant that will help provide equipment, computers and, iPhones, et cetera. I really learned more than anything the continued discrepancy of financial income between people. Unfortunately, it was very, very clear those that were financially
Insecure.
were not even seeking services.
That's heartbreaking. But I do want to encourage our listeners right now, if you know someone who is struggling, to reach out to Geraldine Poletti within Catholic Charities. And I'll have that number for you in just a second. Bishop, I wanted to give you an opportunity for your closing thoughts here on the topic of mental illness, mental health, and awareness of all.
Susan, I think it's a lot more prevalent than a lot of people would like to think. I do think some of the points made earlier, no one wants to really say it out loud. And in other groups where I've talked about it, the fact is everybody could think of somebody in the family, but nobody talked about that much. And that was the problem. If someone falls and hurts their leg, we have absolutely no problem. Everyone rushes out, we're going to help them. But when it comes to a mental dimension of not being healthy, then no one wants to speak, no one wants to maybe be identified. And I think people are afraid, even though they identify someone, oh, wow, they need some help. I think they're a little hesitant to do something about it. I don't have the training, when in fact, this first aid for mental health, I think that's an excellent thing that's being put out there, like for teachers, to spot a child who might need to see somebody in the course of the school day. Family doesn't have the resources or anything to do it.
Thank you, Bishop. Geraldine, what's the best number for people to contact you if they need more information?
239-455-2655. And even though that's a Collier County number, it is for all of the dioceses.
All right, Geraldine Poletti, 239-455-2655. Thank you for listening to Witnessing Faith with Bishop Dewane. Thanks to our guest, Geraldine Poletti, Program Director for the Family Counseling Center of Catholic Charities, Diocese of Venice. I'm Susan Laielli. Witnessing Faith with Bishop Dewane can be heard here on Relevant Radio on 1410 and 106 FM in Fort Myers, or anytime at dioceseofvenice.org. Contact our bishop. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. Until
Thank you,
next time.
Susan.
Thank you.